Reverend Kristen Dollar. I'm a United Methodist pastor and am serving on the Just Faith staff, and got to do a lot of work on this, on developing this program. And so I'm glad to be with you all today. And I have with me my colleague Heidi Villaluz, who is our director of marketing and communications. And I'll go ahead and introduce a little bit about who we are as Just Faith for those of us who are new. Um, we are a nonprofit organization that creates small group programs that ordinary folks can facilitate in their in-person or virtual churches or communities. Our programs guide groups in creating brave spaces of community and trust where you can practice digging deeper into your faith together as a community and ask challenging questions about some of the most important social issues of our time. You don't have to be an expert on any of the topics, and you don't have to have facilitation experience. You don't have to be clergy to bring our programs to your community. We provide facilitation training and all of the support you need to get this conversation going and start taking action together. We participants exit our programs prepared to address root causes of injustice in their local communities and beyond. We cover a wide variety of topics, including racial justice, justice with Indigenous communities, poverty, immigration. But today we are all gathered here today to talk about our creation care series, Sacred Land, Sacred Air, and Sacred Water. And so we'll begin our time together with a prayer. I'm going to read this prayer, and then we will engage together in a meditation. So if you'll just take a minute to take a deep breath, maybe place your feet flat on the floor and feel the ground supporting you. Gravity still works. And just take a moment to be in whatever space you are in. This prayer comes from, or this reading comes from the book Earth Prayers, which is included in the programs that we're about to discuss today. It's called Blessed Be the Wind. Blessed be the wind. Without wind, most of the earth would be uninhabitable. The tropics would grow so unbearably hot that nothing could live there, and the rest of the planet would freeze. Moisture, if any existed, would be confined to the oceans, and all but the fringe of the great continents would be desert. There would be no erosion, no soil, and for any community that managed to evolve despite these rigors, no relief from suffocation by their own waste products. But with the wind, Earth comes truly alive. Wind provides the circulatory and nervous systems of the planet, sharing out energy and information, distributing both warmth and awareness, making something out of nothing. All of wind's properties are borrowed. Our knowledge of it comes at secondhand, but it comes strongly. And this combination of a force that cannot be apprehended, but nevertheless has an undeniable existence, was our first experience of the spiritual, a crack in the cosmos that widened to let the tide of consciousness flow through. We are the fruits of the wind and have been seeded, irrigated, and cultivated by its craft. And like the wind causes our earth to come truly alive, so too our breath powers our beating hearts. We will now take a couple of minutes to honor our breath. Let's find a comfortable position, sitting upright and relaxing our shoulders. Close your eyes if you feel comfortable doing so. Rest your hands with your palms face up in a posture to signify your receptiveness to God's love. Begin to notice your breath's natural rhythm. Notice how your body knows when to inhale and exhale on its own. There's no need to think about it. When one breath ends, the next one begins. Pay attention to where you feel your breath in your body. Maybe it's your abdomen. Maybe it's your throat. Maybe it's your chest. If your mind starts to wander, it's okay. Gently call it back to your breath. Now let's take a big inhale as we breathe in God's peace. And then as we exhale, let us send peace to each other. And now let's do that 2 more times. Breathing in peace and sending peace to others. Breathing in peace and sending peace to others. And now when you feel ready, you can open your eyes. As we continue in our time together, may we seek to notice and honor God's Spirit flowing through us and among us. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kristen. I really needed that. I don't know if anyone else just really needed that too. And so the next couple of slides are going to include some things that those of you who have done Just Faith programs before are familiar with, and continue if you like to drop into the chat where your name, where you're calling in from, how many Just Faith programs, or if you're brand new, let us know. And so if you've taken any of our programs, you're familiar with some of these beautiful prayers and reflections that Kristen just led us through. You're also familiar with the small group format, and so wonderful to pray in a small group here together. And because small groups are where people really build relationships and grow together, and so the format's recommended for 8 to 14 individuals. And beyond that, you can also run multiple groups in a single site. It's meant to be self-facilitated. So the other thing I really love about the programs, as someone who's facilitated myself, as Kristen was reading that, everything's really written out well so that anyone can pick up this manual and lead a beautiful reflection just like that. Also because as a facilitator, you are a participant, and so you also get to engage with the dialogue and the discussion, the learning, and you don't have to be an expert. And so anyone in your community could pick up and be the facilitator if they have some experience with just leading group discussions. Like I mentioned, the manuals are incredibly detailed, and so reflections like that can be facilitated by just about anyone. It can be done virtually and in person, and we have versions for each of those that we provide. There is staff support throughout the whole process, training if needed, both for how to facilitate. So if you have someone who's new and they'd like a little extra support, we have both facilitation support. And if you're doing someone who's doing an online group and someone's new to Zoom or another platform, we have some training for Zoom as well if someone's doing that for the first time. The sessions, there are 9 sessions in each of the Creation Care series programs, one of them being an immersion experience. And so Kristen will talk about that in a little bit, but they're all designed to be 2 hours in length and they build on one another. And so a small group would journey together through those 9 sessions. And they all include spiritual practices, readings, beautiful prayers like the one that Kristen just led, videos, and everything comes linked in, easy to use, without having to pull in a whole lot of extra resources. And so every session will begin with a welcome and opening prayer. There is opportunity for activity and dialogue. And so every week there's some really interesting reading, videos, new information for people to take in, an opportunity to discuss and process in the small group what they've encountered. There'll be some discussion about the reading that happens in between. And then always moving towards faith to action. So considering we've learned what's and the so what and then the now what. So what do we do with our faith? Where do we take it now that we've learned and we've grown in these ways? How do I move as an individual in my faith? and how do we move as a group? What commitments do we make as well? And so always try and help support your communities and not prescriptive. So whatever your community feels moved to address in any one of the series, moving to faith in action as it makes sense for your local community, and then always closing and moving forth in prayer as well. And so Kristen's going to talk about each of the programs individually. And so those of you, we'll also mention later on, there were some folks who are interested in some of the grant opportunities for North Carolina churches, which involve all these programs and a couple more. And so as you're listening, you might also consider, where might I want to get started? And if you need some guidance, we can also provide that. And we'll have some Q&A time to discuss what's coming up for you, what your personal needs are in your community as well.
Great. Well, as we move into the first program in our Creation Care series, it's called Sacred Land, Food and Farming. I would like you to think of a food that reminds you of home. Think of a food that reminds you of home. And if you're willing, type it into the chat and share it with us. While you are doing that, the food that comes to mind for me is my dad's cheese grits. I was really craving those this morning. Okra, yes. Must be somebody else from the South. Sweet corn. That sounds fantastic. Rice is life. Yes. Potatoes, corn, baked potatoes, green salad. Yeah, wonderful. Food has everything to do with who we are. It has everything to do with where we come from and who we're in relationship with. It also has everything to do with who we are as Christians. You know, it's interesting. Jesus didn't got together with his friends not for a final church service, but for the Last Supper, right? As people who gather around a table, whether it's the table of God or a potluck in the fellowship hall or even a kitchen table, really churches are natural places for fellowship to happen and for change to begin. And so we wrote this program to really help you to inspire your church and communities to get started in addressing unjust food systems and understanding the ways in which food is foundational to our relationships and our life together, and it's so important to and the importance of addressing injustice in our food systems. And so um I'll move into telling you a little bit about our program goals. And first I want to say, yeah. And first I want to say, before we move into this, I just want to give a shout out to our partner on this series, Creation Justice Ministries, who we got to work with to create all three of our Creation Care programs. We're so grateful for their incredible work. They do amazing research and provide congregations with incredible support in their Creation Care ministries. And so we are excited to get to partner with them on this series, and it was just amazing to get to work with them in the development of this program. So on to our program goals. The first goal is really to celebrate the sacred connection, our sacred connection to the land and the nourishment it provides, so that we can learn how food and farming practices affect both marginalized communities and the climate crisis. The second one is really to learn from the wisdom and experience of Indigenous communities and to discern how we can stand in solidarity with Indigenous leaders who are working for justice. And then the third one is to develop tools for supporting sustainable food and farming practices in order to build healthy communities and a healthy planet. The tools that we provide in our program are really practical for you and will be helpful, I think, in meeting your community where it's at. And will also be very actionable. And as we'll talk a little bit more about later, you will be creating an actionable plan and realistic plan that you can implement in your own community and in your church as you form lay leaders who are equipped to lead your church in addressing this important topic. And then last but not least, like all of our Just Faith Ministries programs, this program transforms a collection of individuals into a real community of love and support. And we have found that the members of these small group communities who do a Just Faith Ministries program together continue to support one another, and just be involved in one another's lives as they take action for justice. And we found that many groups even stay together for years after their program experience is over, and sometimes even decades. And so now I'm going to move into really the session outline. You will find on our website a detailed overview that really gives a pretty good summary of what each of these sessions are about and what's in them and what topics are covered. And so I'm just going to really pull out a few sessions to highlight, just to give you a better sense of the program. So for this one I want to emphasize is the first session. I just, if you're on camera, I'd like to see a show of hands, or you can type into the chat. How many of you are thinking that offering this program, maybe you are feeling, oh, I'll say this again. How many of you might be feeling a little bit anxious about offering this program, and you're feeling a little bit worried that it might cause a rift in your congregation by talking about a sensitive issue like creation care, climate change? Anybody feeling a little bit of anxiety around that? Well, if you are, I just want you to know that we created this program for you. Um, having served churches myself, I know how difficult it can be to address a topic like this in the community, and to challenge people while also keeping the door open for those who might be a little bit hesitant to broach this topic. And so this first session introduces community of trust guidelines for engaging in active listening and mutual respect, even when we disagree. And we actually piloted this program in Iowa with people across the political spectrum, and we even had a couple of farmers who had very different perspectives on this topic, and they both found it to be a really fruitful experience. And so we just wanted to point this out, that we really created this program to meet folks where they are at. Um, and then in session two, I also wanted to point out, because this does introduce a particularly hard topic called the doctrine of discovery. Has anybody ever heard of that term before, the doctrine of discovery? Yes, maybe you have. The doctrine of discovery, really, we kind of define that as land theft, enslavement, and genocide done in the name of Jesus on indigenous land. This can be a really tough topic, but we believe it's necessary. And we are also really careful to introduce the content in a way that participants can hear, while also being challenged by the topic, because it is challenging. And then the sessions 3, 4, 5 are, pretty self-explanatory from the titles. Session 6 gets into some public policy around land, which is, I think, will address some of the legislation that's currently happening right now, and will be an opportunity for you all to talk about that in a healthy way. And then Session 8, I also wanted to pull out, because Session 8 in all three of these programs is an opportunity for you and your group to put together a step-by-step plan for how you will take action, both individually by incorporating lifestyle changes in your daily life, in your daily routine, and also as together as a group, a plan of action that you will take to care for creation, care for our sacred land in your community. So that is Sacred Land. And then the books for Sacred Land include a book called Earth Prayers, which you heard a meditation from during the opening prayer today. It's a anthology of really lovely poetry, reflections, and meditations, and I think it's something that you'll want to hang on to and use, not just during the program, but maybe even in your daily life after the program's complete. And then the second book is called Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer. Has anybody ever read that book before? It's really, really lovely, and so I hope it's something that you'll be excited to share with your church and community. Robin Wall Kimmerer is a Potawatomi biologist and writer, and she just provides a lot of incredible wisdom around our interconnectedness with one another and with creation. Another important resource that's used throughout all three of these programs is Pope Francis's Laudato Si, which provides a really lovely theological framing that's relevant to both Catholics and folks of all denominations. And so now we will move into the second program in our Creation Care series, Sacred Air, Climate, and Energy. Sacred Air is also, it's all about the climate crisis. What is it? What causes it? What are myths about the climate crisis, and what are facts, and how do we separate one from the other? How do we talk to one another about the climate crisis, especially in these divided times we're living in? And probably maybe most importantly, how does our faith call us to take action around the climate crisis? And so now we'll move into some of the program goals, which will give you a sense of what's in this. Um, the first goal is to understand really the basic principles of the climate crisis. What is the climate crisis? What's causing it? How does this crisis affect us now? And what impact will it have on our future? The US makes up 5% of the world's population, but we are responsible for about 20% of the world's historical emissions. So we have a lot of work to do on this. Our second goal is to learn about the disproportionate effects of the climate crisis on poor communities and communities of color, and as well as discern how we might seek justice together through solidarity, advocacy, and organizing. Just, I guess, yesterday, there was an executive order directly related to this topic. So I think it's a really important one to be talking about in your communities. And then thirdly, you will develop a plan for addressing the climate crisis through advocacy, through grassroots and parish-based organizing, and daily decision-making. That might sound intense, but we are really careful to provide you a gentle on-ramp to some of these things. And then last but not least, to transform a collection of individuals into a community of love and support. And again, here with Sacred Air, the titles are pretty self-explanatory. So I'm going to pull really two of these out. The first one, the session one introduces the theological foundation of the program, which is breath. The Hebrew word ruach, the breath of life. You'll talk about that. You'll talk about the breath of God that animates the dry bones in the book of Ezekiel. You'll talk about the breath of the Holy Spirit, and you will talk about, of course, the sacred air that gives us life. This idea of breath and the theological and the theological symbolism is incorporated into the program throughout the prayers and meditations in each session. You'll see it in poems from the earth prayers that you will read both in the session together and outside of the session individually. And you'll also see this in the spiritual practices that you'll engage in between the sessions. So I just wanted to introduce this really important theme that's woven throughout. And then the other session that I'd like to really pull out and focus on is the session 7 on climate communication. This one's really important because in this era that we're living in of so much fear and polarization, there's a lot of questions about how do we have conversations around the climate crisis that are both prophetic and also productive at the same time. And just a shameless plug here, we also have a separate program on civil dialogue and nonviolent communication that's called Want to Talk: Communication Tools for Divided Time. So if that's a particular interest to your community or a particular need, be sure to check that out. So just two sessions to pull out there. And again, you can read more in the overview. And in the meantime, I'm going to move on to the books that are in the program. Again, Earth Prayers is in all three of these programs, so you can buy that one and keep it throughout all three. You'll also read The Story of More by Hope Jahren. It's about climate change and gives some very practical, each chapter is a very practical example of how the climate change affects us in our daily lives. And so I think you'll find it to be very accessible and readable and also extremely informative. And then on to sacred water, oceans, and ecosystems. And I know I've been talking a lot here, so I just want to take a minute to pause and just think for a minute about an image that comes to mind when you think of the word water. What is an image that comes to mind when you think of the word water? And if you like, you can feel free to type that into the chat. I personally think about I grew up right on the Savannah River, and I personally think about standing, like shin high in the Savannah River and in the middle of the rapids. Thirst, rivers flowing, the ocean, waterfalls, power. That's a good one. And as you think about the word water, is there an emotion that arises with this word? For me, there definitely is. I think there's just really something about our human connection with water that feels so deeply sacred beyond words. Through baptism, we were born of water and the spirit. And really, as the Dene community puts it, water is life, practically and theologically. So sacred water really explores this question, how does our faith call us to care for our earth's waters? And what does our water have to do with climate change? And thirdly, how can I honor our sacred water in my daily life? Let's see. And so our program goals here for sacred water include you will learn about how the health of our oceans, waterways, and ecosystems impacts our present and our future. Second, you will explore water as a Christian symbol and learn spiritual practices to celebrate our human connection with water. Then third, you will understand the ways in which the water crisis, from natural disasters to polluted drinking water, disproportionately affect communities of color. And next, you will develop a plan that to help restore the health of our oceans, waterways, and ecosystems, both within our local communities and across the planet. And then last but not least, you will be transformed from a collection of individuals into a community of support. And so here's our session outline. Just a couple sessions to pull out here. Session 1 introduces the theme of watershed discipleship. And it really just watershed discipleship. Has anybody heard of this term before? Maybe not. It's a concept, it's a theological term coined by Elaine Enns and Ched Myers. And I think it can really be summed up by this Wendell Berry quote that says, the health of the oceans depends on the health of our rivers. The health of our rivers depends on the health of small streams. And the health of small streams depends on the health of their watersheds. And so session 1 and 2 will really introduce this theme of watershed discipleship and how we can really inhabit and care for the specific places in which we live. And there'll actually be an opportunity for you to go out into your watershed to explore the sacred water in your own backyards and local areas and parks and maybe the creeks that run through your communities, and to really get to know them and to care for them as a spiritual practice. There's so much life there that goes on that, all the time, just in our backyards that we don't even notice a lot of the time. So session 1 and 2 will introduce this theme, and you'll have an opportunity to really do that throughout the program. And then again, I'd like to pull out session 3, which is something that we've been experiencing more and more. Or actually, this is session 7, climate resilience. Climate change is happening, and we will do absolutely everything that we can to stop it. But in the meantime, hurricanes and storms and floods are coming more and more frequently, and the ocean is rising. And so really the question is, there's two questions here. Number one, how do we stop climate change so this doesn't continue to happen? But secondly, climate change is inevitably happening already. How do we work with communities to help prepare the best we can? And how can we be in solidarity with them as they repair and heal? And so this will be something that you will discuss together during session 7 and determine some ways to take action with that. The books for this program are, again, Earth Prayers. You'll continue, I don't think I mentioned this in Sacred Air, but you'll continue reading Laudato Si throughout, which you can buy or is available online as well. And then the third book is When the World Runs Dry, The Earth's Water Crisis by Nancy Castaldo. And it's a really accessible book about the water crisis and all the ways that it impacts us and our communities across the nation and across the world. It's actually mislabeled on a couple bookstore sites, and so just note it's actually not. I think in some places it might still be called a young adult book, and it's really not. Although it is a very accessible read, so just to note that there. All right, and I will turn it back to Heidi, who could tell you a little bit about some of the getting started logistics.
Yeah, so for those of you who have done a Just Faith program recently, a lot of the first steps are on our website. For those who maybe have done a program and it's been a while, or it's your first time here, the first thing you'll do is you go to our website, justfaith.org. There's a place where it says start a group. That doesn't commit you into anything, but it gets the process started so that our staff know that you're interested, and we'll walk with you through the process. Once you've decided which program you want to start with, you consider what your start dates will be, start to identify your facilitators, and we provide support and materials, guidance, and answer questions through all of this. Then you will get your group set up on the site so that they can sign up for your group as well. You'll have to think about whether you want to do an in-person or a virtual format. Some groups that do a virtual decide to start in person and then do the rest of it in virtual, and then maybe the immersion together. And then just getting the word out. And we do include with our materials a promotion kit, which has announcements that you can use for bulletins, emails, social media, images that go along with each program. And so we're here to support you as you bring the program every step of the way. And we have a very responsive staff. Leela, our director of outreach and operations, has a Calendly where you can sign up for a 15-minute chat anytime with her, and we'll get you started. We had a couple of folks. We do have some questions. We're still collecting those in the chat. We're going to do some Q&A in just a moment. And we just want to mention briefly, we are going to have another info session specifically about this grant opportunity. But is anyone here right now? We did see some in the registration, but is anyone here right now in the state of North Carolina, or the community that would be participating in the state of North Carolina? And if you're not, and you do know somebody who's there, you can let them know that we have this grant fund opportunity where they can actually bring any one of these programs and our forthcoming bilingual program that's going to be launching this early this summer to their communities, and the registration can be funded. But it is a limited amount, and it's first come, first serve. And so I'm going to drop the funding interest form, and there will also send them in the follow-up materials. And this lets us know that you're interested in funding, and so we can start to kind of get you in queue and get you ready to, if you're seriously thinking about bringing a group to your community. And so we can let you know for sure before we run out of funding. And when the next information is, we'll have one specifically about all the programs that are going to be included in that particular grant. And so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and we'll start to get to some of the questions and answers that folks had. There was a question about the immersion experience. And every program has one. There are recommendations for all of them. It depends on what you have in your locale that you might go visit. But there's also guidance for what each of those immersions, what the aim of them is. And so, Kristen, do you want to talk a little bit about how they vary from program to program?
Absolutely. So and that reminds me, I didn't talk about the guest speaker either. So in each program, there's an opportunity to hear from a guest speaker from the local community in session. This will take place in session 5. And so you'll get to coordinate with a leader in your community who is already working on issues related to our land or air and climate or water, just depending on which program you're taking at the time. And there's instructions on on where to reach out and how to reach out. And if you are having trouble connecting with someone, I would encourage you to reach within your group and ask for suggestions. A lot of times people already come with some passion and interest and some connections. So reach within your group, and you can also reach out to us and we can provide some suggestions as well. And there's suggestions in the program materials, and your facilitator manual will guide you in inviting the speaker and facilitating the discussion with your group. And so this is a really great opportunity to get to know a little bit about some of the work that's already being done in your community and to create an on-ramp into working for justice with and joining some of the efforts that are already in existence in your community. And so another opportunity to do this is through the immersion experience. As Heidi mentioned, between session 6 and 7, there's an opportunity for you to journey together with your group to visit a group or organization, or even a church or community garden that is that is engaged in caring for creation. Ideally, if you are doing Sacred Air, you would maybe reach out to an organization that's working on climate issues or air pollution. With Sacred Land, again, you might visit a local community garden or someone who's working on sustainable farming efforts. And for Sacred Water, likewise, you might reach out to somebody who is caring for local watersheds, or working working in a local park and a local waterway to restore that area. And so you can do this if you are meeting virtually. You can engage in either the immersion experience or the guest speaker experience. You can engage in that virtually as well. And we have some suggestions on how to make those adaptations. With the immersion experience, usually we recommend that folks will meet together in their normal meeting location, pray together, and just prepare for the experience. And then you will travel together to your immersion site where you'll visit with the group or organization or church who has already engaged in this work. And then you will ideally journey back to your meeting location to engage in discussion and some discernment around, what action steps or next steps might be, if you would like to get involved in some of the work they're doing, or if they've given you ideas for how you might take action. And then you'll close in prayer. And of course, you might need to make some adjustments just depending on the immersion experience that you choose. But that's just a little bit about the immersion and guest speaker experience.
And if you've never set up or organized one of the programs before, and you're worried about who the guest speaker is going to be or what the immersion experience might be, as someone who's had to organize programs, also you don't actually have to know all of those details before the program starts. It's nice if you can line them all up, but you can also tell people this is when the immersion is going to happen. More details to follow. We're going to have a guest speaker, more details to follow. And then you can give that information because you'll have a few weeks time to build that in. So also rest assured that you don't have to have that all locked in when you start to promote the program. We had another question, Kristen, about the development of the land program. Were farmers in the program invited to participate, or have we had feedback from people involved in farming around that program?
Yes, absolutely. We worked with, well, so first of all, we worked with the folks at Creation Justice Ministries to develop this program, who have been in close collaboration with folks who are doing farming work. We also, I think I mentioned that in the pilot process, we had 2 farmers in our pilot group who gave us feedback. And so yes, this was really important to us to get great feedback around it. And I will also say that our founder has also been of Just Faith Ministries. Jack Jezreel has also been a farmer, and so he actually wrote some of the material for this program and was involved in the process.
Great question. And we're gonna, there's just one more question in the chat, and then we're also gonna invite you all, if you wanna just come off mute too. We'll stop the recording, so if it makes anyone a little more comfortable to just chat and have a conversation or to ask their question aloud. But there was someone who did mention that they do have some concerns about bringing a creation-oriented program to their community. And just if Kristen, if there's anything that you want to offer as a reassurance, I'll just share that in all the experiences of all the programs that I participated in, and people I know that have come into any one of our programs where they're not sure. There's maybe concerns and doubts that we always start from a place, and that's part of the small group strategy too, is to bring people to a place of relationship where we can have some really open and build a community of trust and have open dialogue around the things that we're not sure about, or that that maybe we disagree with, but can we start to hear other points of view, and never try to push people necessarily faster than they need to be, that they're ready for, and that we also provide facilitation support. So troubleshooting, when conversations sometimes get sticky, when you're not sure how to respond, we do also have some guidance in the materials themselves, and then we're always here to check in with and say, hey, this came up in my group, and I've used that also as a facilitator before I started working for Just Faith. This came up in our group. How would you recommend responding to this? And I got some great advice. So Kristen, anything else, any other advice for folks who maybe have some concerns about bringing it to their community?
Yes, and yeah, just to add that in session one of all of our programs, there really is an opportunity to, it's sort of a training on how we have hard conversations around and what to do when we disagree. And so it really starts from a place of acknowledging the difficulty of this topic that we're about to discuss, and and the program provides tools for how you will navigate that for when there is disagreement. And really, it sets the tone for disagreement being a normal part of dialogue. And and I think the tools that you will learn in this program will really help you to navigate difficult but yet so important conversations, not just within this program experience, but also beyond that as well. And I think you'll find that it will bring your community closer together. And then secondly, I just want to say that we base all of our programs, really they are deeply theologically rooted, starting with the common foundation that we all share, which is the Christian tradition, our scripture, and our faith. And so starting from this place of commonality, I think can be a good place to work, a great place to work from. And then thirdly, I'll say that having worked in very conservative and even more rural communities in the South, I know how difficult it can be to in purple communities that bring together more conservative and more progressive folks. And I know how difficult it can feel to talk about this. I've also found that when I have broached these important but difficult topics, people have been really hungry to talk about this with their church family. Like, church should be the place where we talk about the things that really weigh most heavily on our hearts. And so I would just encourage you to take that risk and to talk about these things, because this is really, this is what we're called to do. We're called to love one another and to um, broach these really important but necessary conversations that is so deeply intertwined with the values of our faith and our theology. So yeah, but yes, I can understand and relate.
Thanks, Kristen. So we are going to stay on a little bit longer and invite folks to chat. We're going to just end the formal recording, and so we'll send this out to everyone who registered, and want to thank everyone, including those who've maybe had to sign off a little bit early, that we were able to provide this. And we welcome you to forward the email that has the recording and any of the follow-up materials to anyone who might be helping to organize or make the decision about bringing one of these programs. But I'm going to pause the recording, but thank you so much for being here.